What's going on, young goats? It's your boy 3, representing TKOG, and I'm going to show you guys some cracked cards, bro. I'm showing you guys, honestly, I can make a podcast about this, bro. I love custom cards. This is my favorite thing about Yu-Gi-Oh, bro. Y'all just don't know. This is, like, low-key addicting. It's so cool. It's so fun. If you guys do not do this, go on DB and make custom cards, print them out, play with them with your friends, bro. It's insanely fun and it's super cool. You get to just explore every aspect of your creativity. It's really cool. I got the Dark Ruler archetype for you guys. This is a Dark Fiend archetype. It's a trap-based deck. The gimmick of it is it gets bonus effects if your opponent activates something as chain link 2 or higher, and you get to activate your traps from hand. It's a control deck. It's not really broken, and it's very gimmicky, so it's easy to play around. And also, it's not the most consistent deck in the world. You only have like 12 starters, and two of the 12 starters, so 6 of the 12 starters are trap cards. So it can be on the slower end. It is a control deck. It's like Sky Strikers. The inspiration, if you guys want to know, that I got from this deck was I got inspired by Labyrinth, the Amazement archetype, Magical Musketeers, and I got inspiration from, I can't remember the other archetype that I got inspiration of. It's gonna come up though. But yeah, I got inspiration from other decks for this deck, and yeah, let's talk about it. So we're just gonna get straight into it. We're not gonna waste any time. Let's get into the first starter of the deck. We have Dark Ruler Ardan. So every Dark Ruler, their names are going to start with an A, and their personality type is going to be in front of their name. So he's Ardent, and his name is Adronis. Every Dark Ruler is like that. They all have their personality trait and then their name, and they all starts with an A. That's just how I made it. I'll talk about the lore later. And then you can activate Dark Ruler traps from your hand, and the same turn they're set. Every Dark Ruler has that effect. Magical Musketeers, bang, bang. 15-15 on the stats. Every level 4 is a Dark Fiend with 1500 attack and defense. Every level 8 is a Dark Fiend with 2500 attack and defense. Let's just get that out the way so we don't have to talk about it later. Let's get into the effect. That's what you're here for. If this card is summoned, you can set one Dark Ruler trap from your deck. That's the first effect. If your opponent activates a card or effect as chain link 2 or higher, you can return this card to your hand for cost. And if you do, you can special summon the Dark Ruler monster from your grave. You can only use each effect of Adronis once per turn. So on summon, he's kind of like the dino, what do they call it? Dinomorphia starter. You just summon him, set a trap. So he does play around Ash Blossom in that regard. He gets you a guaranteed disruption through Ash. And he's also pretty crazy because if your opponent like impermanences him or Veilers him, you get to chain link 3, bounce him for cost, and then optionally you can summon a Dark Ruler from grave. So playing on turn 3 on the crackback, this card can get really scary because you will have life targets in grave. So like you'll be summoning him and they'll try and disrupt him because he gets a guaranteed, he always forces disruption because he gets a trap that can just literally break your opponent's board. So he always has to be interacted with. And then you just chain bounce for cost, and then now they have to deal with something else that comes out. So you're always going to have to deal with something with the Adronis. He really shines after turn 1, where his effect is live to actually reborn. That's where he gets broken, like how good this card can be. But that's all he really does. He's really nifty. Though there's also a weakness because he bounces himself for cost. The trap that he sets, now it's a normal trap. You have to wait for a turn, so you can't activate it the same turn because you can only activate Dark Ruler traps from your hand or the same turn they're set if you control Dark Ruler monsters. That's how the Dark Ruler monsters work. And a lot of the Dark Ruler traps, you have to control a Dark Ruler to activate them. So that's Adronis. Let's check time. Gucci. Okay. The next starter we're going to talk about is Auspicious Artemis. He's auspicious, and his name is Artemis. Same clause, same stats. We already talked about that. Every one of them have the same effect. You can activate your traps from hand, and the same turn they're set. Quick effect: tribute this card from your hand or field. Cost, and then if it resolves, you add one Dark Ruler monster from your deck to your hand. Other effect: if a trap card or effect is activated while this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. So he reborns if a trap card or effect is activated. So it's an extender, but it's way slower as an extender, right? You have to actually activate traps. So it's not going to be, this deck's not going to be as fast as like every modern deck that you could think of right now, but it's fast in its own way, in its own regard. It's not a slow deck. It gets tempo in a different way. That's how I wanted to build it. It has to be unique for me. I don't want to make like a template version of something that's already out. So this card is actually the best starter in your entire deck. He's the most broken card because he enables turn 0 plays because he's a quick effect to search. And that's super relevant because you can add cards that let you play on your opponent's turn 0. So guess what? He's a starter and a hand trap. And if you activate a trap card or your opponent activates a trap card or effect, While this card's in your graveyard, you could just special summon this card. So it's crazy. Really, really strong card. That's Artemis. The next card we're going to talk about is probably the only other card that could be considered a starter, because both of the monsters I showed you were starters. Audacious Apollo. He's audacious, boy. He is. His name's Apollo. Look at him. Himothy, bro. Same thing. Activate your traps from hand. I'm not going to say that anymore. Just, if you're paying attention, absorb every retina, like everything you can, bro. Just pay attention. Use your freaking attention span, bro. Pay attention. All the Dark Ruler monsters say you can activate traps from your hand and the same turn that they're set. And it's only for Dark Ruler trap cards. So you can activate Dark Ruler trap cards from your hand at the same turn they're set. Every single Dark Ruler monster in the main deck says that. And the Link monsters say that too. I just didn't put them in their text. So Audacious Apollo. Very good card. It says if a Dark Ruler card or trap card or effect was activated this turn, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. He's lady, bro. He's lady. And if you do, add a Dark Ruler trap card from your deck to your hand. He's an immediate disruption. You summon him on your opponent's turn, immediately disrupt him with any trap he adds. If your opponent activates a card or effect that's chain link 2 or higher, you can return this card from your field to your hand as cost. And if you do, you can special summon a Dark Ruler monster from your hand, except Audacious Apollo. You can only use each effect of Audacious Apollo once per turn. So his effect to summon and search is all one effect, so he does not lose to any effect negation hand traps. This deck just struggles with Ash so hard. It's crucial. Ash and Impulse can like murder this deck. Like literally, this deck's very weak into those cards. Just like Labyrinth is very weak into those cards, this deck is too. Audacious Apollo, very, very strong. If you're playing turn 0, you activate Artemis, search him, immediately summon him on your opponent's turn 0. You get to play like Emperor Multifaker. You get to do I Resolve Tearlament, Haveness. Bro, it's crazy. It's think of this as like Rescue Ace Impulse. That's what like Artemis works like if you search Apollo. Apollo only summons itself the turn a Dark Ruler card or a trap card effect was activated. So he's like Lady. The next Dark Ruler monster we're going to talk about is Assailant Asselin. So same effect as all of them. Activate your cards. Quick effect, if your opponent activates a card or effect that's chain link 2 or higher, you contribute this card from your hand or field, then target a Dark Ruler trap card in your grave and one monster on the field. Set the first target to your field, then negate the effects of the second target. If a trap card or effect is activated while this card's in your grave, you could special summon this card. So every time you once you get your engine set up in this deck, you flip a trap, you're gonna get so much advantage. It's just like Labyrinth, bro. So this card's dead in your hand. It's an absolute brick. It's absolute garbage. If you don't have a trap in grave and your opponent doesn't activate a card or effect that's chain link 2 or higher, this card does nothing. He's just a name. You still need names because you want to activate your Dark Ruler trap cards from your hand and your Dark Ruler best disruptions. You have to control a Dark Ruler monster to activate them. So this deck can be fragile. And I did a really good job at balancing it. So I don't want to hear no crybaby comments talking about this deck's broken because it's really not. But it is good. I designed it very meticulously. I know what I'm doing, bro. I know what I'm doing, bro. So yeah, he's impermanence, but he's a little bit better because he sets your Dark Ruler trap while he's negating a monster's effect. So he's like broken for like a pendulum swing of advantage. Like he's just crazy good, bro. You could be losing and then boom, pendulum swing. I'm in a driver's seat now, bro, just off of Asselin. So because a lot of these cards are gimmicky and they're easier to play around, what it also means is in order for your opponent to play around these cards, sometimes they won't respond to you. That's where the gimmick becomes a strength. Like the deck's weakness, how, this card's only good if your opponent activates something that's chain link 2 or higher. That also means, so it sucks if your opponent doesn't. But that also might be a good thing because if your opponent's not activating cards that's chain link 2 or higher, that means they're not responding to you. You know what I'm saying? So this card could be like a call by the grave in certain context. So he's really, really, this archetype's strong, bro. You can't tell me nothing. And then we got Ascended Achilles. This is the last main deck Dark Ruler monster. All of them are muskets. You can activate your cards from hand and the same turn they're set. During your turn, quick effect. During your turn, not your opponent's turn. So this is not that good going second. During your turn, quick effect. If a trap card or effect was activated this turn, you can special summon this card from the hand, then add a Dark Ruler card from your. Then you can. It's optional. Then you can add a Dark Ruler card from your graveyard to your hand. So he's okay. He adds cards from grave to hand. He's a beat stick. He's a free body. But the best part of him is this card, this part right here. His second effect, when a trap card or effect is activated as chain link 2 or higher, you can target a card on the field or in either graveyard, place that target on the top of its owner's deck. Booyah! This card's crazy. spot removal that it's like this deck spot removal is like better than like Mirror Jade or SP Little Knight or like Trident Pop. It's even better than Compulsory Evacuation Device because like when you bounce something back to the top of the deck, anything that says if this card leaves the field by A, B, C, or D does not activate. If you put Mirror Jade back off Achilles, she won't activate. If you put like it's just crazy because it bypasses floaters. Like there's nothing can activate when it gets put back into the deck. Cards can't activate in deck like that. You put Mirror Jade back to the extra deck, she's not nuking your field. So Achilles is a really good layer. So Achilles is like a strong disruption. So you have main deck disruptions off of Achilles and Asselin. And like Apollo and Adronis can disrupt because they get traps, but they don't interact on their own. But like Asselin and Achilles let you do some heavy lifting off of just them. Next, we're going to get into the trap cards. So the first trap card is Ardent Anchor. Ardent, every trap card has the same name, like the same personality trait as the card they belong to. So Ardent Adronis, this is his trap. This is Welcome Labyrinth. Special summon a Dark Ruler monster from your deck or graveyard. If you control the Dark Ruler monster when you activate this card, you can Foolish Burial a Dark Ruler card from your deck to your grave. You cannot summon non-Dark Ruler monsters for the rest of the turn after you activate this card, or after this card resolves. So if it gets ashed, you can summon generics. This card is broken as a Pendulum Swing for advantage. If you're just drawing it by itself, it's still a one-card starter. It's really good. But if you already have a monster, it's broken. It's really good. Next starter that we have is going to be Auspicious Alchemy. Add a Dark Ruler card from your deck to your hand. If you control the Dark Ruler monster when you activated this card, your opponent actually cannot activate cards or effects that's chain linked to or higher in response to this card. Also, you can place a card in either graveyard on top of its owner's deck. So this is actually a disruption. If you activate this card and you control a Dark Ruler monster, it's a disruption. If you don't control a Dark Ruler, Alchemy and Anchor are just starters, but they get better if you control a Dark Ruler because they get bonus effects. Foolish Burial and then like a pseudo DD Crow because you get to like Yada lock your opponent with this deck. If this deck gets in control and simplifies the game state, you'll never win because it can just control your top decks. So yeah, if you didn't play good and you don't have follow-up in your hand, this deck will take your follow-up from grave. It's going to like check your princess and it's going to hit your Flamberge targets and then it'll just give you your worst card to draw. So it's crazy good. Now for the disruption cards, my favorite card, Audacious Laugh. This card is named Laugh for a reason because your opponent. So how it works is if your opponent activates a card or effect that's chain linked to or higher while you control a Dark Ruler monster, target a face-up card on the field, negate its effects. So this is a permanent negation, by the way. Audacious Laugh. Like your opponent activates something in response, you just you laugh, bro. You target a face-up card, hot Reddit forever, and then. Until the end of the next turn, Dark Ruler monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's activated effects of cards with that card's same name. Don't get confused by that. What Audacious Laugh means is whatever Audacious Laugh negates, your opponent, your Dark Ruler monsters are unaffected by cards with that card's same name until the end of the next turn. So if this card negates Fenrir, and your opponent has another way to get Fenrir back on the field, until the end of the next turn, your Dark Ruler monsters you currently control are unaffected by Fenrir anyway, so it doesn't matter. So it's a cool, nifty card. If your opponent like Dark Rulers you, Droplets you, Lightning Storm, Raigekis, and you negate one of those with this, you don't have to worry about a duplicate copy of like Dark Ruler or Raigeki. You know what I'm saying? Like this card mitigates the duplicate copies. So it's a really cool. I actually like this card. As a disruption, it's very unique. It's very strong, and it's a good tool that this deck has at its disposal. The next card we're going to talk about is Tyrant Tempest. So if you guys didn't know, this is Ascended Tyrant Tempest. This is Achilles Trap. Auspicious Alchemy belongs to Artemis. Anchor belongs to Adronis. And then Audacious Laugh belongs to Apollo. And this one, Tempest, belongs to Achilles. It is Achilles' effect. Literally what this is, if you control a Dark Ruler, target a card on the field or in the graveyard. Place that target on top of its owner's deck. This deck has such good grave control and board control. This card is literally the same exact effect as Achilles in a trap card form. Really good. It's his trap. The last trap we have is going to be Assailant. Assailant is literally almost identical to the monster form. It targets if you control a Dark Ruler, target a monster on the field, negate that monster's effects. Also, this turn, that monster and monsters in its adjacent zones cannot declare an attack. So this card can be really good defensively because not only can it be like reactive to negate cards and just like stop your opponent from playing, but also it can prevent OTKs in the right context. Like, is it able to be played around? Yes, that's the that's pretty much like the idea of this deck. This deck has bonus gimmicks, but your opponent can play around them. But by playing around them, your opponent will be in an awkward position, right? For example, if they need specific zones and they want to play around this card, then they can't use the specific zones they need. Otherwise, they play into this card. If your opponent wants to play around Assailant and cards like Apollo, they don't want to activate cards as Shielding 2 and higher because they don't want their stuff to be negated. That means they can't respond to your cards, because if they respond to your cards, that is Shielding 2 or higher. So it gets really good. You know what I'm saying? This deck can get really good, but just off the rip, it's a deck that can be not that great if your opponent doesn't do anything. It's like Cyframes, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. Like Runic, you don't put cards on field, it's not going to be that great. So that's all the trap cards. Now we're going to go into the extra deck cards. They have 2 links. Dark Ruler Archfiend, 2 monsters including a Dark Ruler. The whole deck's Dark Fiends. If this card's link summon, add a Dark Ruler card from your graveyard to your hand. Then if it was a trap card, you could special summon a Dark Ruler monster from your hand. That's a pretty good effect. It's just recovery, on summon, recovery. When a trap card or effect is activated while this card's in your grave, you could target a card in each player's spell or trap zone, special summon this card, then destroy those cards. So if you have this card in grave, let's say I have Dark Ruler in grave, Archfiend in grave, and I activate Assassin to negate my opponent's monster, I can chain Archfiend directly to that card, and then I can summon him, and this card will remain face up on the field till the chain resolves. So I get to destroy this for free, and a spell or trap card in my opponent's field. So I get to target this, and I get to target one of their, like, for example, their Temple, their freaking, the Deception, and I could just pop their Deception or their Temple off of Archfiend for free. It's very similar to activate Hollowed Azamina, chain Wanted, use Wanted as the fusion material. Because this card remains face up till it resolves, Archfiend just pops this for free, which is really good. It's really, really good. It's the same reason why you could chain MST and Cosmic Cyclone to a normal spell. It's still on the field, so you can still target it. It's really good. This card is like, he's not bad. He adds from grave to hand, he can extend if you need him to, and in grave, he's another disruption. And then the Link 4 is like the card that you need to get to as soon as possible. The Dark Ruler, clicked on the artwork. 2+ monsters, including a Dark Roll monster. Monsters this card points to cannot activate their effects as Chain Link 2 or higher in response to your Dark Ruler trap cards. 3 arrows pointing up, that's 3 zones that your opponent will just, they'll be useless. How this works is it's inspiration from Lovely in the Labyrinth matchup. She says your opponent can't activate any monster effects. This card just says your opponent, she says your opponent cannot activate any monster effects in response to any of your trap cards. This card just says your opponent's monsters that this card points to cannot activate their effects as Chain Link 2 or higher in response to only your Dark Ruler trap cards. So it's a very watered down nerf version of Lovely. If this card's link summoned, you can set 2 Dark Ruler trap cards to your field, 1 from your deck and 1 from your graveyard. And then the last effect it has is once per turn, you can banish a Dark Ruler trap card from your hand or graveyard, and in non-targeting, pop a card on the field. So this card is really good. It's the boss monster. It's not a quick effect to pop, so it doesn't really, this card's first 2 effects are not that great because it doesn't do anything on your opponent's turn. But what it can do is, obviously, if it's link summoned, you set 2 Dark Ruler traps, 1 from your field and one from your deck, 1 for your grave. So this card's actually pretty crazy because it gets 2 disruptions, and it can be recovery, follow up, and like that's all you need. Those 2 disruptions can turn into many more because of how the deck plays, and it just protects you. So if you're going second and you put this guy up, the 3 monsters he points to, if they're negation text cards, like they're disruptions, like, you know, they're freaking Desiree or whatever, they can't respond. So he's a really good card. It's heavy lifting, man. That's the entire deck. That's pretty much the gimmick. The deck's really, really strong. I'm going to show you guys the deck profile. We are 18 minutes in, so I think we're doing good. Hopefully you guys are still watching. Yeah, that's pretty much the entire archetype. It's a really good deck. It's very strong in the right, I want to say in the right hands. This deck can be really good, but it's definitely not like an easy deck to pilot, and it's very punishing if you really don't know how to play. The only mistake I made when I designed these cards is the link monsters are just, they're Dark Rulers, and every Dark Ruler monster, including the links, all should say you can activate your trap cards from your hand in the same turn they're set. So I'm going to fix that when I go in later, but yeah, every single Dark Ruler monster should all say that you can activate your traps from your hand in the same turn they're set. This is my list. We have 3 Fuwalos, 3 Ash, 3 Imperm, 3 Impulse. These are the best hand traps in this deck because they're trap cards, and they turn on Apollo. So if you ever draw Artemis and it gets ashed, and let's say you ever draw Apollo and you don't have Artemis, you can still turn Apollo on by activating any of these trap cards. It's really strong. Artemis can be crazy because if your opponent Ash Blossoms Artemis, you can just, if you already hard drew Apollo, you can just activate Apollo. Once your opponent understands how to play against this deck, they can always just let Artemis resolve and then just Ash the Apollo because they're both Ashable cards. And that way they can play around you having a copy of Apollo in hand already. So this deck, again, it's not that crazy good. Like, it is very easy to understand how to play against this deck and the counter. But, like, the nuances adding to the layers that the deck already has, like the Chainlink 2 or higher gimmick is really good. Like, if you have, like, Assailant up and you have, like, Apollo and, like, you have Ardent, any of those cards, your opponent's going to think twice on whether they want to activate a card as Chainlink 2 or higher, especially because of Audacious Laugh. You have to play around this card. Like, this card is not hot. This card's not hot red unless your opponent activates a card as Chainlink 2 or higher. So this card can be dead. Your opponent can completely play around it, but in order to play around this card, they have to not respond to your cards, and that's where you get to kind of get the feeling and semblance of being able to play solitaire sometimes, because your opponent will not want you to be able to use certain cards, and in order to play around them, they have to not respond. So again, this is a strong deck, but it also has very, very I want to say obvious weaknesses, but the obvious weaknesses also give a different strength to the deck, if that makes sense. So you have 12 going second cards, but Artemis and Apollo are also going to give you like 6 more. Artemis by itself is a crazy combo. I can show you guys when we get into the combo section, but Artemis, if you don't play around Asher Impulse, Artemis can get you like 3 disruptions by itself. It's crazy good. So we have those. We have 3 Adronis. I max out on every single Dark Roller name except for Achilles because he's an absolute brick. So we play 3 Artemis, 3 Apollo, 3 Adronis, 3 Anchor. This is the best card. Like, honestly, Anchor is like, if you don't have like Artemis or Apollo or like Adronis, Anchor is like literally the best. This card's crazy. And like, if you normal summon Adronis and you already had Anchor, it's kind of crazy because your opponent can go activate like Impermanence or something on Adronis, and you can just chain the Anchor, you know what I mean, and just keep your Adronis up. So Anchor is crazy good. As well as 3 Alchemy, they're just starters. 3 Asselin, this card's a broken going second card actually. But it's not as live as the other going second cards because you need a Trap Engrave to activate this, so it's a dead draw. But it's still a name. You need a normal summon it to control a Dark Ruler so that you can activate these bottom 9. These cards are all dead if you don't control a Dark Ruler monster. But you max out on them because these are your other going second tools. Like, these are all going to allow you to disrupt and break boards. So technically you have way more going second cards than just the 12 hand traps. But these cards are only live if you control a Dark Ruler monster. And Artemis is only good if your opponent doesn't have Ash, you know what I mean? But you also have Fuwalos, you know, so if your opponent ashes Fuwalos, you can just resolve Artemis. The only thing you need to respect with this deck is if they're playing Fire or Darks, you got to respect Impulse. And to play around Impulse, that means Artemis might, Apollo might have to do something else, or Artemis might have to search a different card, for example. Like, if you impermed your opponent and then Artemis, you can go Artemis into Asselin or something like that, you know, and just play differently. So, yeah. That's the deck, though, pretty much. We play 3 of every single Dark Ruler trap card because they are that good. We play 3 of every single Dark Ruler monster except for Achilles because he's, like, the brickiest one, to be honest. He's arguably stronger as a body than Asselin. But Asselin is just, like, better going second because your opponent's always going to activate cards as Chainlink 2 or higher. If you're playing into their board, they're going to respond. So, we are 23 minutes in. Extra deck, the only things that matter are 3 Dark Ruler Archfiend and then the 1 Dark Ruler. Everything else is fodder. You don't even really make these. You always want to resolve Anchor as much as possible. You do make Yama, and you go Yama into Rage and the SP if you need to, or you go Yama into Anguish into Abomination or Access Code Talker if you need to. You play SP, you play Dark, you know, you play the toolbox, the utility cards, Baguska for Shifter, Dweller because it's an FTK against water, Cowboy for Time, Typhon because it comes up in mid-range decks. You should play 2 Typhon in this deck, technically. I'm just going to actually stop here. If you guys really, really want to see the Dark Ruler combo tutorial and duels with this deck, I need you to drop in the comment section below. We want more Dark Ruler content, and I will respond. Thank you guys so much for watching. Deuces as well, y'all. Peace.